Great Demon King. Chapter 31. You're a magical genius. Standing outside Fanny's hotel room, Shuo knocked on the door with slow, deliberate taps. "Brian, is that you?" "Come in," came Fanny's soft, slightly languid voice from within. He opened the door and was greeted by a sight that made his heart skip a beat. Fanny had obviously just finished a bath. Her damp, purple hair clung to the milky white nape of her neck, and tiny droplets of water still beaded her cheeks, like translucent pearls trailing along her skin. She wore a fluffy white robe that left a small portion of her ample bosom exposed, the pale skin glowing under the flickering lamp in the simple, sparsely furnished room. From the open door of the bathroom off to the side, wisps of steam drifted out, adding a warm haze to the scene. Fanny was seated by a small round table, towel draped around her shoulders as she tried to soak up the remaining moisture in her hair. Her eyes, tinged with concern, lifted to regard Shuo the moment he stepped in. "What is it you wanted me for, Master Fanny?" he asked, looking around the room in feigned innocence. His heart, however, hammered in his chest. The robe clung to her in such a way that it accentuated her every curve, and he recalled all too vividly the awkward, heated moments on the back of the horse earlier that day. Yet, outwardly, he forced a dumb, almost fearful expression onto his face, presenting himself as hapless and sincere. "What for?" Fanny snorted, setting the towel aside. Her gaze sharpened, and she leveled a reprimanding glare at him. "You had the nerve to do those things on that horse today. I have always known you as timid and cowardly, but you become outrageously bold when your lust takes over." Shuo felt a jolt of guilt flare up inside him. "Here it comes," he thought, bracing himself for the reckoning. He let his face look all the more embarrassed, chewing on his lower lip, as if pained by the memory. Then he took a deep breath and lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry, Master Fanny. It's just that you're so beautiful, and you were so close, pressed against me. I don't know what happened, but I couldn't control myself. I truly regret it. If you want to punish me, I won't resist." Fanny slapped her palm on the table in frustration, startling him. He pretended to recoil with fear, eyes widening. "Damn it, Brian, you violated me," she exclaimed, her tone quivering with anger. "Do you even understand how serious that is?" Shuo nodded, forcing an earnest look onto his face. "I do understand, Master Fanny, and I'm willing to take responsibility." That line seemed to cause Fanny to freeze, as if she found the very notion absurd. She gave a bitter, humorless laugh. "Take responsibility? With what? Do you have any idea what you're saying?" Cheeks flushing, Shuo bowed his head. "Then, whatever you decide, I'll abide by it." For a moment, Fanny was at a loss. Her brow creased, and a flicker of hesitation danced in her eyes. Even though she felt violated, violently so, in that fleeting, humiliating instant, she also knew that no genuine malice had been intended. After all, she had been the one to insist he share her horse, placing them in that compromising situation in the first place. And while the event was embarrassing and upsetting, it wasn't exactly a heinous crime. She found herself unsure how to address this with a mere errand slave, especially given that punishing him too severely seemed awkward. Sensing the conflict in her, Shuo seized the opportunity. A notion sprang into his mind, one that might redirect her from the issue. "Master Fanny," he began, adopting a thoughtful tone, "didn't you once say I was good material for your experiments in necromancy? I'm not sure how to describe it, but I felt some odd changes in my body recently. My mind, too, is different. And a few days ago, I heard Lisa chant the incantation for the bone arrow spell. I sort of tried it myself, out of curiosity." He paused, letting a note of excitement creep into his voice. "And, well, I was actually able to cast it." Instantly, Fanny's furious composure cracked. She stared at Shuo in sudden astonishment, all thoughts of punishing him momentarily eclipsed by this unexpected revelation. "Wait, you're saying you managed to cast bone arrow?" she blurted. A surprising spark of eagerness lit her features, the necromancer in her outweighing all other concerns. "Are you certain? Show me right now." Shuo could barely hide his triumphant smile. He had guessed right. Fanny's fascination with necromancy far outweighed her anger at the moment. "Yes, I can show you," he said simply. He took a step back to give himself room, and then raised his arms, inhaling slowly. Keeping his voice low, he began chanting in the grave, lilting tone of necromantic incantation. "Oh, endless darkness, turn into destructive bone arrows, and destroy, according to my will, bone arrows." The air rippled faintly, And sure enough, a small, razor-tipped bone arrow coalesced out of a swirl of necromantic energy. It propelled itself forward with a swift whistle, heading for the wooden wall, only to wobble abruptly in mid-flight and explode with a sharp cracker. Fanny started, the scholar in her instantly taking over. No, she corrected, striding closer. Your incantation is spot on, but your hand seals are wrong. The right hand should be raised a bit higher, and you need to angle your left hand lower so the energies don't interfere. She pointed with her slender fingers, demonstrating the proper gestures. Then she gasped, as if remembering something, and her eyes widened with excitement. But wait, you really just cast necromancy magic right in front of me. That's incredible. How is this possible? Han Shuo scratched his head, feigning naive confusion. I'm not sure, it just happened, but I'd be really grateful if you could teach me the correct motions. Of course. Fanny was already all in. She flung aside the towel she'd been holding and hurried to Han Shuo's side, her cheeks still faintly pink from the earlier situation. Now, though, curiosity eclipsed embarrassment. Step by step, she demonstrated how to align his arms and focus his mental strength without letting it slip. Han Shuo tried the incantation a second time, adjusting to the recommended posture. Oh, endless darkness, turn into destructive bone arrows, and destroy according to my will. Bone arrows. This time, the arrow formed cleanly, but exploded just before it struck the wall, sending fragments scattering harmlessly. Fanny tapped her chin. Careful with your mental strength, she said. You must maintain perfect control until it hits the target. Relax too soon, and the arrow destabilizes. Nodding, he drew in a measured breath and chanted again. Oh, endless darkness, turn into destructive bone arrows, and destroy according to my will. Bone arrows. Bone arrows. A glimmering pale arrow spun into existence, zooming forward in a straight line. A crisp theft followed as it lodged itself in the wooden wall, quivering for an instant before dissolving into a haze of faint magical residue. This time, it didn't explode prematurely. Oh my gosh, Fanny cried out. Ecstatic, she hopped on the balls of her feet, eyes shining. Brian, you're a genius. A magical genius. I only guided you twice, and you can already cast bone arrow successfully. Most students need at least a month or two to master that spell. Some take even longer. This is just astounding. For a moment, she looked ready to fling her arms around him in joy. Her excitement was so unbridled that she almost forgot the entire cause of her anger. Before she could speak further, a shrill voice from the next room rang out. Damn it, who's casting random spells? It almost hit me. Hey, Brian's son. Master Fanny, what are you doing together? They both turned to see Lisa's face poking through a small hole in the wall, one eye squinting with confusion. The chunk of bone arrow had evidently come dangerously close to breaking into the adjoining room. Lisa looked scandalized. Oh, it's nothing, Fanny said quickly, briskly walking over and placing a hand on the hole. I just wanted to see if Brian could replicate a necromancy spell. That's all. We're done now, Lisa. So don't worry. Go rest. Before Lisa could press for more information, Fanny stuffed the towel into the hole, sealing it. Letting out a tiny huff, she spun to Han Shuo, the earlier frustration partly replaced by excitement. Stand still, she said, stepping close. I need to figure out what's happening in your body. Yes, Master Fanny, Han Shuo replied politely, though inwardly he felt a mischievous satisfaction. If she examined him, it might only deepen her intrigue in his condition, further cementing the idea that he was more than just some helpless errand boy. Fanny took a slow breath, preparing to channel a minor detection spell, but she paused, nose wrinkling. What is that awful smell? She muttered with a frown. Han Shuo felt his stomach flip in embarrassment as he realized exactly what she was referring to. He lowered his head. My room has no bathroom, so I couldn't shower. I'm sorry, that smell is still on me. The earlier horse ride fiasco and the resultant mess had left his clothing stale and musty with certain bodily fluids. Fanny's cheeks blazed as the humiliating memory came roaring back. She shot him a scathing look and spat. Despicable. Her mind briefly recalled that sticky moment. Shaking it off, she pointed to the still steaming bathroom. The water's still warm. Go clean yourself. Now. He gave a hasty nod, painfully aware of the wetness still clinging to his lower body. Taking a few steps, he entered the small, steamy enclosure. A simple, round wooden tub stood in the center, half filled with water that Fanny had presumably used just moments earlier. The space smelled faintly of lavender, the remnants of her bath. With a single glance, he noticed the bits of delicate lingerie, still damp, hanging from a nearby rack. They were so lacy and sheer that a flush of excitement stirred in him just looking at them. Right then, Fanny bustled in, clearly flustered, and scooped up her garments. She stuffed them under an arm, all too aware of his gaze. Catching the heated light in his eyes, she let out a sharp tetch, then stomped to the doorway, pausing only to pinch his backside before leaving in haste. Detestable, she hissed one last time, cheeks scarlet. Han Shuo exhaled heavily once she was gone, peeling off his clothes and sinking into the wooden tub. Warm water caressed him, carrying with it the faint fragrance of lavender and Fanny's lingering heat. The aroma, and the mental image of her stepping out of the tub, so recently made his heart flutter in a heady mix of shame and delight. He took his time, scrubbing off the day's dust, and more importantly, that sticky evidence of the incident. The water gradually lost some of its warmth, but he remained in it as long as he dared, savoring the quiet moment. Eventually, after Fanny's third knock on the door, he rose, wrung out his clothing, and slipped back into the main room. "It's late now," Fanny said tersely, as though none of that earlier excitement or intimacy had occurred. She folded her arms. "I want to inspect your body tonight. We'll leave it for another time. You should go and rest now." Han Shuo nodded, offering her a polite, bashful smile. He draped his damp clothes over his shoulder, wearing only his spare trousers. Turning toward the exit, he reached for the doorknob, but paused as Fanny called out, "Brian." He glanced over his shoulder. "Yes, Master Fanny." She frowned, hesitation flickering in her gaze. You don't seem that crazy to me." "Not at all. I remember you were all out of sorts before. So what's the real truth?" Han Shuo felt his heart jump. He forced a bewildered expression, feigning ignorance. I don't really know. Sometimes my head throbs, and everything goes dark. Other times I feel perfectly fine. It's all a jumble." Fanny regarded him a few seconds more, then gave a small nod, as though unconvinced but unwilling to pursue it now. "I see. Go on then. Remember, keep practicing. If you really can cast necromancy spells, you might have a future far beyond simple chores." Without further comment, he bowed slightly and left, shutting the door behind him. Once out in the dimly lit corridor, he let out a long breath. So many thoughts and emotions churned within him, from guilt to thrill, from pride in his newly revealed magical talent to lingering desire for Fanny. But one thing was certain. He was no longer just the Academy's hapless errand boy. More and more, he was becoming a practitioner of necromancy, and something else as well, with the hidden powers of demonic cultivation lurking beneath the surface. Walking away, he couldn't help a small private smile. Fanny might be angry with him, but this demonstration of his necromantic abilities was sure to change how she saw him. And that, he told himself, is only the first step.